Hello, my name is Father Michael, and I want to share an experience that changed my life forever. As a Catholic priest, I have spent years preaching about faith, God's love, and the mysteries of the afterlife. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to witness firsthand. I have always believed in heaven, in the power of prayer, and in the teachings of Christ. My life has been dedicated to serving the Church, guiding people through their struggles and strengthening their faith. But deep inside, like many others, I had questions. Questions about what happens after death, about God's mercy, and about the true nature of eternity. Then one fateful day, I found myself on the edge of life and death. It happened so suddenly that I didn't even have time to understand what was going on. One moment I was here in this world, and the next I was slipping into something far greater. What I experienced during those moments changed everything I thought I knew. I saw things I could never have imagined, felt a peace unlike anything on earth, and received a message that I knew had to be shared. I had always spoken about God's love and salvation, but now I had seen it for myself. I returned not just as a priest, but as a witness to something beyond human understanding. What I bring back is not just a story, it is a truth that I now carry in my heart, a truth that must be shared. Let me take you through my journey, through the moment of my death, my meeting with Jesus, and the powerful message he gave me. Before this, please comment and tell me from where you are watching this video. I never imagined my time would come so suddenly. It was a regular day, just like any other. I had finished my morning prayers, spoken with a few members of my congregation, and was preparing for the evening service. There was no warning, no sign that my life on earth was about to end. One moment I was standing, and the next, a sharp pain shot through my chest. My legs gave out, and everything around me faded. The moment I left my body, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. It was as if I had been carrying an invisible weight all my life, and now, suddenly, it was gone. No pain, no struggle, just peace. Yet, at the same time, I was fully aware of everything happening around me. I could see my body lying still, people rushing around, trying to revive me. I heard their voices, but they seemed distant, almost like an echo from another world. Then something incredible happened. A light appeared. Not just any light, but a living, radiant presence. It wasn't blinding, yet it was brighter than anything I had ever seen. It felt warm, like a loving embrace. It was pulling me forward, but not forcefully. It was inviting me, calling me, and I wanted to follow. As I moved closer to the light, I realized I was no longer standing on any ground. There was no floor, no sky, just a vast space filled with peace. I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt more alive than I ever had in my earthly body. My senses were sharper. I could see without using my eyes, hear without using my ears. It was as if I was experiencing everything with my soul, not just my physical being. Then I became aware that I was not alone. At first, I saw shadows in the distance, figures moving toward me. But as they drew closer, I recognized them. Some were family members who had passed away long before. Others were people from my congregation, individuals I had once comforted in their final moments on earth. They were smiling, radiant, filled with a joy I couldn't fully describe. One of them stepped forward. It was my grandmother. I hadn't seen her in decades, yet here she was, looking young and full of light. She didn't speak with words, but somehow I understood everything she was saying. She told me I was safe, that this place was real, that I had nothing to fear. Then I felt another presence, one far greater than any I had encountered before. I couldn't see him clearly yet, but I knew. I knew who it was. The air around me seemed to hum with love and power, and my soul trembled in awe. I was about to meet the one I had dedicated my entire life to. At first, I could only feel him, an overwhelming presence of love, peace, and authority. It was unlike anything I had ever known. Every part of my soul recognized him instantly. This was Jesus. Not as a painting or a figure in a story, but real, alive, and more radiant than I could ever describe. Then I saw him. His presence was light itself, but not just brightness. It was warmth, comfort, and truth. His eyes, oh, his eyes. They held depths I cannot explain. When he looked at me, I felt completely known. Every thought I had ever had, every action I had ever taken, every doubt, every moment of faith. He saw it all. And yet, there was no condemnation. Only love. Pure, unshakable love. I fell to my knees, not because I had to, but because I couldn't help it. The weight of who he was, his holiness, his beauty, it was overwhelming. Yet, at the same time, I felt the greatest peace I had ever known. He spoke, but not with his lips. His voice was inside me, around me, everywhere at once. It wasn't just sound, it was truth, flowing directly into my soul. "My child," he said, "you were never alone. Every moment I was with you. Even when you doubted, even when you felt lost, I was there." Tears streamed down my face. I had spent my life serving him, preaching about him, guiding others to him. And yet, in that moment, I realized how little I truly understood about his love. It wasn't just something to be talked about. It was alive, powerful, deeper than words could ever express. Then he showed me my life, not as a judgment, but as a lesson. I saw moments I had forgotten, times when I had been too busy, too distracted, too caught up in religious duty to truly love the people around me. I saw times when I had spoken about grace but not fully extended it, not to others and not even to myself. But there was no shame, only understanding. He wasn't showing me to condemn me. He was teaching me. Then he said something that shook me to my core. "You must go back." Go back? But I was home. I didn't want to leave. This was where I belonged. "You still have work to do," he said. Tell them about my love, about my truth. Not just in words, but in how you live." I didn't want to leave his presence, but I knew I had to obey. I had always prayed, "Thy will be done." And now his will was calling me back. As I stood in the presence of Jesus, I felt something beyond words. Truth. Not just as knowledge, but as an undeniable reality. Every question, every doubt I had carried in my heart seemed to fade, replaced by a deeper understanding. Jesus did not just speak to me with words. He filled me with truth, pouring it into my soul in a way that changed me forever. The first thing he made clear was the depth of his love, not just for me, but for every single person. "Tell them," he said, "that my love is greater than their failures. I do not turn away from the broken, the lost, or the sinful. I seek them." His words made me realize how often we, as humans, judge ourselves unworthy of his grace. But he does not see us the way we see ourselves. His love does not waver based on our mistakes. It is constant, unwavering, and always reaching out. Then he showed me something that shook me. I saw people, so many people, walking through life burdened by fear, anger, and guilt. Some were weighed down by their past, others by the worries of the future. "They live in chains," Jesus said, "but I have already set them free." He wanted me to tell people that true freedom comes not from success, money, or even religious rituals, but from surrendering to his love. We are not meant to carry our burdens alone. I also received a powerful insight about prayer. I had spent years praying, leading prayers, teaching others how to pray. But in that moment, I understood something deeper. Prayer is not just about words, requests, or traditions. It is a connection, a relationship. "Speak to me, not as a distant God, but as your closest friend," Jesus said. "I am always listening." He showed me how often people pray out of obligation rather than from the heart. But true prayer is about opening our souls to him, being honest, even in our struggles. He does not want perfect words. He wants real ones. Then came one of the most humbling revelations, the importance of love in action. "Many know my name," Jesus said, "but they do not know my heart." I saw scenes of people who claimed to follow Christ, but were consumed by pride, judgment, and division. And then I saw others, some who were never recognized as religious, but who lived with kindness, forgiveness, and compassion. Jesus made it clear. Faith is not just believing in him, but becoming like him. "Love without condition," he said. "Forgive without limits. Show mercy as I have shown you mercy." Lastly, he revealed a glimpse of eternity. It was not just a place, but a reality beyond anything I could describe, full of light, peace, and joy. And yet, he made it clear. Our time on earth matters. The choices we make, the way we treat others, the love we share, it all echoes into eternity. One moment I was standing in the presence of Jesus, bathed in his love, filled with truth beyond anything I had ever known. And then, in an instant, I felt myself being pulled away. It was not a decision I made. It was as if my soul was being drawn back. I did not want to leave. Every part of me longed to stay, to remain in that perfect peace. But I knew I had to return. The transition was not smooth. One moment I felt weightless, free of pain, free of all the burdens of earthly life. The next, I was being forced back into my broken, weak body. The pain hit me first, a sharp, overwhelming sensation, as if every nerve had suddenly come alive again. I gasped for air, my chest rising as I struggled to breathe. My heart was pounding, my body aching, and then I heard voices, urgent, panicked voices around me. Doctors, nurses, people shouting instructions, machines beeping. I was back in a hospital room and I realized they had been trying to revive me. Someone cried out in shock, "He's back." Another voice, barely above a whisper, said, "It's a miracle." I opened my eyes, but everything felt strange. The world looked dim. After experiencing the radiance of the afterlife, the brightness of Jesus himself, everything here seemed dull, almost colorless. My body felt heavy, like I was being weighed down, and for a moment I struggled to remember what had happened. But then it all rushed back. The love, the truth, the message I had been given. Tears welled up in my eyes, not because of pain, but because I knew I had been sent back for a reason. Jesus had given me something to share, something I could not keep to myself. But even as I tried to speak, my voice was weak. The nurses were asking questions, checking my vitals, shining lights in my eyes, but I could barely focus on them. My mind was still caught between two worlds. Then I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. I had seen something most people never get to see. I had heard the voice of Jesus, not just in my heart, but in a way that left no room for doubt. He had given me a message, a mission. And now I had to live differently. I wanted to tell the doctors, the nurses, everyone in that room what I had seen. But how could I? How could I put into words something so beyond human understanding? At that moment, all I could do was weep, tears of gratitude, of longing, of knowing my life had forever changed. As I lay there, my body weak but my spirit stronger than ever, I whispered the only words I could manage. "Thank you, Jesus." I was alive again, but I knew I would never be the same. When I came back to life, it wasn't just my body that had changed. It was my soul. My faith, my purpose, everything about who I was had been transformed. It's hard to put into words how profound the shift was. I had always believed in God, had always preached his love and grace, but what I experienced in the afterlife, it changed me on a deeper level. It wasn't just an intellectual understanding anymore. It was a knowing. I had seen the face of Jesus, felt his love in a way that words cannot describe. His message to me wasn't just something for me to keep hidden in my heart. It was a calling. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me as soon as I woke up, even before I fully grasped the reality of what had happened. It was as if Jesus himself had placed a mission in my hands, and I could not ignore it. I remember sitting in that hospital bed, still weak, still recovering, and I could not stop thinking about the message he had shared with me. It was not just about the afterlife, about the glory I had witnessed. It was about love, the love we are supposed to share with one another. Jesus spoke to me about the brokenness in this world, the hatred, the division, and how it grieved his heart. He told me that the way to truly know him was to live a life of radical love and compassion, to reach out to the lost, the hurting, the forgotten. That was his message, not just for me, but for the world. He made it clear that I had been given this second chance for a reason, to spread his love and his truth. But it wasn't just about preaching from the pulpit anymore. It was about living out that message in every interaction, in every choice. I was called to be more than just a priest. I was called to be a vessel of God's love in a world that desperately needs it. When I returned to my church, the first thing I noticed was the way people looked at me. It wasn't pity or concern, it was something else. There was a sort of awe, a reverence, as if they sensed something had shifted in me. And they were right. But I didn't need to say much to them. My actions, my heart, would do the talking. My new mission became clear: to remind people of God's infinite love, to help them see beyond the temporary struggles of this world and understand the eternal peace that comes from faith in Him. The people I interacted with began to feel a difference when I spoke to them. It wasn't just my words. It was the love in my heart that I was now able to share so freely. A love I had experienced so deeply in the afterlife. I started to reach out to those who were lost, not just in the spiritual sense, but in every way. Those who felt hopeless, abandoned, or unloved. I started offering more of my time, my energy, my heart, knowing that this was what God had called me to do. It wasn't always easy. The world can be a harsh place, and some people were skeptical of my newfound purpose. But I wasn't shaken. I knew with every fiber of my being that this was the life I was meant to lead. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I had already been given the most profound truth, that God's love is real, it's eternal, and it's meant to be shared. And so, I made it my mission to live every day with that love as my foundation. In a way, the priest I was before the experience and the priest I became afterward were two different people. But in another way, it was as if the truth of who I was had finally been unlocked. As I share my testimony, I realize just how much it has affected not only me, but also the people around me. After my near-death experience, I couldn't keep the profound truths I had witnessed to myself. It wasn't just something that happened to me, it was a gift, one that I felt compelled to share with the world. I started telling my story to anyone who would listen, not to boast or seek attention, but because I felt it was my responsibility to make sure others knew that God's love is real, that He sees us, and that we can experience a deeper relationship with Him than we ever imagined. I'll never forget the first time I shared my experience in front of my congregation. I was nervous, not knowing how they would react, but as I spoke, I saw something shift in the room. Faces that were once heavy with doubt or uncertainty began to soften. Some people began to weep, others nodded with understanding. It was as if the walls they had built around their hearts were starting to come down. That was when I knew that my experience had a purpose, to help people reconnect with the love of God. People began coming to me after the service, sharing how deeply my story had moved them. I had never seen such genuine tears and expressions of hope. I had always known that God could work through me, but to witness how He was moving in their hearts was humbling beyond measure. It was clear that my testimony was resonating with many who were struggling to feel connected to their faith. My story became a reminder to them that death doesn't have the final say, that God has a plan for each of us, and that no matter how far we may feel from Him, He's always there, waiting for us to return. It wasn't just in the church where I saw the impact, though. As I spoke to friends, neighbors, and even strangers, I began to see how deeply people were longing for something more. They were tired of living in a world filled with division, anxiety, and suffering. My story seemed to offer them a sense of hope they hadn't experienced before. They saw that even in the midst of hardship, there is a peace that can't be found anywhere else. The peace that comes from knowing Christ. I've met people who were deeply skeptical of faith, some even dismissive of the afterlife. But when they heard my testimony, something shifted. It wasn't about convincing them with logic or argument. It was about sharing the undeniable truth of my experience. For those who were open, it seemed as though their hearts were softened, and they began to ask questions they hadn't dared to ask before. They started seeking answers, searching for meaning in ways they hadn't before. Looking back, it's clear that my near-death experience wasn't just for me. It wasn't just about receiving that divine revelation. It was about sharing it with others. The true meaning of my experience, as I reflect on it, is about the radical love of Christ and how it transforms everything. It's about hope, that no matter how dark or painful life may seem, there is always the promise of light on the other side. It's about living with intention, knowing that the love of God is not something we just talk about. It's something we live, something we offer to others every single day. What I experienced has changed my perspective on everything. I see now that life is more than just the moments we live in this world. It's a journey that connects us to something much bigger, something eternal. And my mission now is to help others see that too. I hope my testimony continues to inspire others to seek that deep connection with God, to live lives full of compassion, and to never lose sight of the love that transcends all things.